Okay, so then I'm Jürgen Löffler. I'm coming from BMW. I keep the company presentation short. It's a car manufacturer and motorcycle manufacturer. Most of you have most likely heard of BMW. And we have production sites in every continent. We have suppliers in almost every country in the world. And in order to keep that interface to the suppliers in a professional way, we have created about 100 commodities. Yeah, we have split the vehicles into separate regions, and then we say if it depends to interior or exterior or to the powertrain, then these are specific purchasing departments responsible for. And suppliers and the supply chain are very, very important for us because the majority of the value added to a vehicle and also the majority of the innovations which are in a vehicle are generated by suppliers. Yeah, I mean the vehicle manufacturer still is doing the overall concept and the final assembly, but suppliers and the supply chain are very, very important for us. And I want to talk to you. I want to present you first what areas of the supply chain should be covered. Yeah, give you some ideas what you perhaps could do additional. And then I want to show you some organizational and regional setup hints of your supply chain management. And then I want to show you some examples of handling of critical situations in the supply chain. So let's start with the number one. What areas? So there's an obligation to do the supply chain management, and it's not only the customers and our management. It's also some legal requirements which force us to do that. There are some standards, yeah, some corporate governance standards. These are not really legal requirements, but they are also close to legal requirements. There are some norms, international or national norms, like the ISO norm or the IATF or TISAX norm. Yeah, I mentioned the contract obligation. Sometimes your own customer gives you the obligation that you have to do a risk management in your supply chain. Your own management or your supervisory board could be the one which wants you to do that. And there are also some audit standards from the accounting world where you have to bring your risk management in place. And in my opinion, there are 4 maturity levels in the supply chain risk management. Yeah, the number one here on the left, which is now in the yellow box. This is like the first thing a company should do is to understand the full risk landscape, what risk categories are relevant for me, and what are implications to my own company. And I want to give you some examples for that. So one is like the supplier level itself. Yeah, this is the company which is in our case producing the components for us, and this is, in my personal experience, the main risk category where we have the most issues. For example, capacity issues, quality issues, financial problems of suppliers, and all of these examples what you can see here. Then we have this environmental level, which become more seldom, yeah, like COVID or some war, and you cannot influence them a lot. On the supply level, you can influence them more. And there are also some internal things in your own company which can block your risk management activities. For example, if you don't have any supply risk or crisis management team in your own company, or you have somebody but they have no professional knowledge or experience, or no budgets, or they can decide nothing, this is, in my opinion, a risk itself. And all of these risk categories together, they can generate financial losses. They can generate an operational lockdown, and then you can not produce anymore. So let's go to the second maturity level. After you know all your risk landscapes and the potential risks, then you should work on actions to reduce these risks and potentially to prevent a crisis in the future. like the one in the environmental level, it's very difficult to reduce them. But if you look in your own company or at your supplier level, you can really do something here. So you have here an exemplary illustration of a supply chain in the automotive industry. On the far right, you see the original equipment manufacturer, where we assemble the final vehicle, yeah. And then if you go to the left, it's the so-called tier one. It's like our direct supplier, where they produce like a complete cockpit or a complete seat, for example. And if you go more to the left, then there are some single component manufactured, which go then into a bigger module. And then if you go more to the left and left and left, the parts are getting smaller, and also the transparency is getting lower. Yeah? It's actually quite easy to know your direct business partners. It's also possible to know the next level, but it's getting really difficult in the tier 4, tier 5 level. So I want to show you an example now on the transport transparency between our direct contract partners, the so-called tier 1, and our own plants, what we have done here in the last years to improve that. And then I want to show you some examples what we are doing inside the suppliers, mainly on the production side of our suppliers, sometimes on the second tier level. And then I want to show you an example what potentially can be done more deeper in the end tier level. So in the beginning, like 10 years ago, this was almost a black box between the supplier, which is manufacturing the components. When the good left the supplier, then it was somewhere on a truck or a ship or in the rail, and until they arrived our good receipt, and then we know, okay, the truck has arrived, now we can book it. But then we also had some old IT systems which just overnight updated potentially the inventory. So it was not always clear where the goods are and will they arrive in time. And yeah, we had, what was the reason? Independent IT solutions. The coverage was updated in the night sometimes. And we had from time to time to pay extra money for expedited freights because we found out it will come too late. We have to send an extra truck. And then we also had a lot of fluctuation. Yeah, the trucks did not arrive all on the same time. So sometimes there's no truck in your goods receipt, and sometimes there are perhaps 5, 6, or 7. So this is also not good for balancing your work. So we wanted to have transparency here in this black box in the middle between the supplier production side and our own assembly side. And we introduced the control tower. So our lead logistics forwarder has now a control tower which connects all the data. And the trucks are either directly connected to this control tower, or there's an app available which the truck driver can load onto their mobile phone, and then they can send with the app their position. And just in case that we find out this truck has a damage of the engine or is stuck somewhere, then we can already in time send a new truck, and we don't have to wait until the truck should have originally arrived, and then we find out it will not come. So this reduced the expedites. It's better for the workload in the goods receipt department. The stock levels have been better transparent, and if you have such a digital tool, then you can add extra information. You could, for example, add to your box a small device, and you can measure the temperature, the humidity, or if there are some shocks, if the truck is driving on a bumpy road, which can potentially damage your goods. You could also add these sensors and get this information. Yeah. So the result was delays and transport damages are identified on earlier stage. Countermeasures can be initiated earlier. So we improved the level between our own production side and the direct supplier. And now we wanted to understand better what's happening inside the production side of our supplier, or in some cases we also go to the next level. If the tier 1, our direct supplier, is only doing an assembly, then we also have to go to the next level, to the second tier, which are producing the components, and we want to understand what they are doing. And why? The reason is, yeah, it's written here in the center, it's good to know what and how your supplier are doing. I mean, we are calling this a factory analysis. So it's a comprehensive analysis. We are doing this, for example, when we are in the selection process with a company which we have not worked before, or they offer us a new plant which we don't know, or potentially there are some minor problems we want to find out why. So then we go there, do the full 1 week analysis. We look at the finance, the manufacturing processes, internal transportation, warehousing, production planning, project management, sub-supplier management, the volume fluctuation handling, how they handle that, how they can manage it, service or maintenance of tools and maintenance of the production equipment, quality management, the human resources, the qualification, the recruiting, all that kind of stuff. So now it's getting more difficult. Now we know what's happening on our suppliers' production side. Now we want to find out the end tier level, and this is really tricky because we don't know that companies, yeah, and sometimes our own suppliers don't want to tell them. So here there are different ways to do it. You can do some questionnaires and try to that each of your partners is asking the next partners. And there are some IT tools available in the market. I've shown here an example. They use big data and they analyze, for example, movements at borders, yeah, at immigration, where goods have to go through customs, or they use some port data, some shipment data from trucks, from airplanes, from ships, and try to find out if there are some routes which are regularly used from different companies, and then with a probability calculation, they say this could be most likely one of your sub-supplier. So here's another example. So they say the light lines, there are very seldom movements. The thicker lines, it's more likely that more often the thicker lines. So and then they can say here this is most likely your second tier or third tier. So this is one approach to find it out. And if you have identified a potential sub-supplier, then you can monitor this position, this factory, and potentially react earlier than your competitors. And in our risk management approach, we also think about the so-called criticality. I mean, risk is something like the probability that something will happen, but it makes a difference between if you're not delivered with a specific component which can potentially harm you very, very much, or another component which is easier replaceable. So I have some examples here to understand that better. So a part is more critical depending on, for example, how easy it is to substitute a component. So if we produce, for example, a car and the headlight would be missing, a mechanic can replace in a few minutes a headlight. So if the headlight is missing, we can just put it on later. But if, for example, the automatic gearbox would be missing, this would be a disaster. So this is like how easy it is to replace it later. How long the technical replacement time is. So the technical replacement time is how much time you would have to spend to develop a new one. Yeah. So if, for example, your supplier is burning down, the production site doesn't exist anymore. A secret lighter you would get easy from somewhere else. The shock absorber not as easy. How many alternative suppliers there are available on the market, or how complex the entire supply chain is. Yeah. Sometimes it's just easier, the supply chain, and then it's not so critical. Then we also look, so we know the typical cause of a corporate crisis. Normally, a company which is in a corporate crisis, this crisis follows some steps. It starts with a stakeholder crisis here on the far left, then comes a strategic crisis, a profitability crisis, earning crisis. Then there's your supply risk, and then you have an acute crisis. You're under crisis management. And if you understand what are the indications of each of these stages, then you can identify it and you can react properly. So in the first two levels, normally the company, your supplier, would solve the issues on its own, do some performance measures. When you're in a profitability crisis, then you would need a chief transformation officer, or an earning crisis, there sometimes a chief restructuring officer on site. And when your supplier is on risk or potential insolvency, then it's pure crisis management. And the more you come to the right, the more effort you have to spend on that topic. And therefore, it's important to identify it early and not to wait until the crisis is going from the left to the right. And we have discovered here some indications. I show just a few examples here. So, for example, if you have a downgrade in the financial rating, this is a very old warning indicator. Logistics or quality management can give you some indications, or acquisition of distressed companies, and they offer job protection to all employees, lower turnovers. Just examples. I flip through. You can read them later in the handout. So the idea is you start with analysis of historical data. This is what the most of us have done like 15, 20 years ago. You look at financial KPIs on the annual report, on the balance sheet. This is the classic analysis. The next step would be you look at current indications. Yeah, this is what also a lot of software providers are offering you, things which are just happening now. Yeah, like they have a mass layoff, they have nominated a chief restructuring officer, or they have some defects. So this is the big data monitoring. And the art is to have indications to the future. So you have to find indications which are happening now, but which give you indications to the future. I mean, easy is a profit warning, but more difficult, for example, new environmental law, how can this influence your supplier, or a planned sale of the business unit or a change of unit ownership, how can this influence the performance of your supplier? And also, again, from left to right, it's getting more difficult. So, and in order to respond and manage these issues, and in order to keep your business running, it's good to install some kind of firewalls. Yeah. So like this graphic, which I've taken from another presentation, you have different sources of risk which are coming from the left, and you're installing different firewalls, and you have to make sure that they're not coming to the far right, that you catch them. So we have internally created 4 levels. We said there's like a identified risk, then there's a level for an increased risk. The next level is supplied risk, and the next level would be acute crisis. And then we said, so if one of our suppliers is identified as a risk, we have to do something in order to avoid that this supplier will be an increased risk. And if it is an increased risk, we have to do something in order to avoid that the supplier is at risk. And then again, we have to do something that we don't have an acute crisis. Because if you're doing nothing, it's just going from the left to the right. And then, I mean, you can prepare for it, but you have done nothing against it. So you should also do something against it. So like a magnet to bring this ball away and to catch it somewhere on the way. So then if you have some tools, then you can get it out, and it's only an increased risk at the end. So we have developed then a toolbox. So for each of these levels, we have collected from our experience and best practice what tools could be used in this stage. And if then the supplier is an identified risk, we will use that tool. If it is in the next level, increased risk, we can use that tool. And so we have more and more tools. The next level would be to recover from a crisis. So if you had a crisis, then you have to learn your lessons learned and to emerge stronger. And here is also important to use IT and technical support. But I want to show you that the machine alone is not a solution. So you can analyze what happened and which impacts does this have to the present. Yeah, these are these tools which you know, which give you alerts. There's a fire, there's a strike. But then you have to analyze why did it happen. These tools normally not tell you. And then what you also not have in the tool, what will probably happen next, and how can we prevent it from happening. So this is a mix of the machine, which is providing you the alerts, but you need still the human, which have the expertise and experience. And together, the machine and the human, this is, in my opinion, the best solution. Now I want to show you something about the organizational and the regional setup of supply chain management. In my opinion, you should have a specific supply chain risk management organization. It should not be done from a purchaser as a 1% extra job, because then they will not do it. So you can just start with a small part of the risk management and add step by step more content. And also my recommendation, if you are a multinational company, if you have your production sites or your warehouses or whatever in different continents, you should have people on site in Americas, in Europe, Middle East, and in Asia Pacific, because of the time difference. I mean, there's more than 6 hours between Europe and Americas, and also 6 or more than 6 hours in the other way between Europe and Asia Pacific. And if you have to do your phone calls at 5 o'clock in the morning and your last phone calls at 11 o'clock at night, then this is a horrible work day. So therefore, it makes sense to have people in each continent on place. And also you have to be on site from time to time, and then you save travel time and travel costs. Very, very good is a matrix organization, people in the different regions and split it up, for example, by commodities. This makes sense. So here's an example. You could start with a risk management organization, for example, with 2, 3, 4 topics. You can start with finance, with cyber, with product risks. If this is running, you can add some more. And if this is running, you can add some more, and then you can add more. And it can be even decentralized. It's not necessary that one department or one person is doing everything, depending on the size of your company. And from time to time, if a new risk category is discovered, it can be added to this landscape. So, and in the next chapter, I want to tell you something about the handling of critical situations. So this is more the crisis management. And the question is, if you have done the risk management and you have prepared for a potential event, are you really ready then for the crisis management? Because this is the so-called business continuum management. And this should also be described, what will be done in such an event, because here it's written, when a crisis situation occurs, the last thing we want to have in our mind is to clarify what needs to be done, who can do it, and who should do it. This should be clarified before, because in a really critical event, you don't have the time to do it. And now I want to show you just some examples, because I'm asked from time to time, do you really have so many crisis events? Yes, we have them all the time. So here are just some examples. Here the frame of a bridge was destroyed, and therefore a major traffic could not go through this interstate bridge, or some landslides which really destroy your normal transport route. You have blockages, this famous Suez Canal, or you're losing containers in the high sea. Or here's an interesting thing. We had a strike of some ferry workers. We are, for example, producing cars in UK or in Europe and bringing them then from Europe to mainland Europe to UK, or from UK to Europe. And the ferry strikers, they decided, in order to avoid that we use the railroad or the road, they burned some tires. So the sea was on strike, the railway and the road was on fire. Or here was a supplier, they kidnapped their bosses in order to get a higher severance payment. They kept them for 30 hours. And you see here in the right picture, they put a big tire into the door frame in order to let them not escape. This was a tire manufacturer, by the way. Here's another supplier. It's just a picture from outside. They have not paid their bills, so they had no heating for some months, and then electricity was cut off, so they could not produce, and they could also not ship because they could not print some barcodes without electricity. Here's another supplier where the employees decided to burn down more or less the whole factory in order to get what they wanted. And here on the left side, I wrote the translation. It says, "We will blow it up." So they threatened, they invited the television to broadcast that. Here's some examples where forklift trucks is destroying some equipment, and on the right side, they are destroying with some welding machines, the tools and the machinery. Here's also a strike, a blockage of the road that the trucks cannot enter or leave. So we had to use helicopters to fly out the goods. And here's a fire. The photo was done outside from our own facility. So the neighbor supplier facility was on fire. This is another example. This was an explosion at a magnesium foundry. Perhaps you remember from your chemistry school lessons, if you connect magnesium with water, there's a big explosion, and this company had water sprinklers on the roof. So they had electric damage, some sparks in their fuse box. This caused the sprinklers to let the water rain down, and then there was a big explosion. Some political unrests, flooding. Yeah, this is a producer of headliners. This is this big part above your head when you're sitting in the car. You see here the people had to use the boats. On the right top, the IT department, and on the right bottom, the tools. This is another flooding event. It's very difficult to keep the production running with such an event. Or even one event can trigger another one. So we had a power outage here in Texas, for example. Then the production of resin, this raw material for plastics, had to shut down, or we had a cyber attack and the natural gas supply was interrupted. So this caused a big shortage of this raw material for the plastic injection molding. And here's an interesting thing, because one event can come together with another event. So we had here a company which was in an insolvency proceeding. So during the insolvency proceeding, there was a flood, and it was a foundry also for magnesium. The flood, the water level was very close to the magnesium oven. So it was short before we had this explosion. After insolvency and flooding, potentially we could have had an explosion, but it had not happened. So what can we do if something happened like this from the pictures? I have some solutions here. We can check if another site or supplier manufacturer can provide the same or similar components. We can check if the affected component can perhaps temporarily be eliminated from the offer, that the customer can just not buy it anymore. We can check if the component can be manufactured using another technology, or if we can use another material to produce it. We can check if alternative components can be installed. Sometimes you can offer your customer, you have ordered a special component, we give you a different one, a better one, potentially for the same price. They could accept it. Or you just assemble something wrong, or you leave a hole, so-called dummy, and later replace it then. And here, this is the last picture. Also important, you should have really experts in the supply chain risk management, like the firemen, which are fighting against the fire. There was, almost 50 years ago, a very famous fireman with the nickname Red Adair, and he was famous for the oil wells. Yeah, if there was a fire on an oil well, and from him is the sentence: if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur, because then you will see how costly it is to hire an amateur. So thank you for listening. I think I made it more or less in the time. Is it correct?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jürgen. That was perfect.